gets me frustrated. Life like this, and you fall and you crawl and you break and you take what you get and you turn it into honesty. You promised me I'm never gonna find you fake it. No, no, no. Why you have to go and make things so complicated? You're acting like you're somebody else, gets me frustrated. Oh, oh, why you have to go and make things so complicated? Yeah. Oh, acting like you're somebody else, acting like you're somebody else. Oh, you fall and you crawl and you break and you take, you get, you turn it into honesty. You promised me I'm never gonna find you fake it. No, no, no. Baby's good to me, you know. She's happy as can be, you know. She said so. I'm in love with her and I feel fine. Baby says she's mine, you know. She tells me all the time, you know. She said so. I'm in love with her and I feel fine. I'm so glad that she's my little girl. She's so glad she's telling all the world that a baby buys the things, you know. He buys her diamond rings, you know. She said so. She's in love with me and I feel fine. I'm so glad that she's my little girl. She's so glad She's in love with me and I feel fine. I stay out too late, got nothing in my brain. That's what people say. That's what people say. I go on too many dates, but I can't make them stay. At least that's what people say. That's what people say. But I keep cruising. Can't stop, won't stop moving. It's like I got this music in my mind saying it's gonna be alright. Cause the player's gonna play and the hater's gonna hate. I'm just gonna shake it up, I shake it up. Heartbreaker's gonna break and the faker's gonna fake. I'm just gonna shake it up, I shake it up. I never miss a beat. I'm lightning, I'm a beat, and that's what they don't see. That's what they don't see. I'm dancing on my own. I make the moves up as I go, and that's why they don't know. That's why they don't know. But I keep cruising, can't stop, won't stop grooving. It's like I got this music in my mind saying it's gonna be alright. Cause the player's gonna play and the hater's gonna hate. I'm just gonna shake it up, shake it up. Heartbreaker's gonna break and the faker's gonna fake. I'm just gonna shake it up, shake it up. 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 Shake it up, shake it up.
Good morning. Oh, good morning, everybody. Mike Lee, president of Sonoma State University. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. And first of all, I want to thank you for coming to this very important forum, but it's also a town hall meeting. I think it's important for us to share with you our thinking, share with you our preliminary plan, so you have a chance to hear directly from us and not through newspaper or radio or whatever other sources, directly from us, directly from the president. And I think this is also opportunity for all of you to be able to share with us your thoughts, your feedback, your experience, your impression about what we do. And we can always, always be better. And I say this many times, a widely consulted, inclusive process will yield a better decision. And this entire process of consultation is actually an exchange. It's an educational process that allows all of us to learn more about what's happening on this campus. You get to know how we think about elements, decision factors. I learned from all of you what you care the most, what Sonoma State means to you. It is a very powerful educational process. Of course, I say that all the time because I continue to have the professor faculty in me that really, really want everything to be educational. So thank you very much again for coming here. I'd like to get started. We will present a little bit of information because many of you have already seen probably the slides like 12 times. So there's probably not a whole lot of need for me to go over them in all the details. So we'd like to actually save more time to allow a little bit more exchange, that you're able to ask us questions and we're able to provide some answers so we can carry a dialogue instead of one-way talking. Okay, so let me get started by welcoming Laura, who you already know, doesn't need a lot of introduction to start it.
Thanks so much. Good morning, everyone. I'm Laura Lupe. I'm the Associate Vice President for University Budget and Resource Planning. Almost forgot I had a presentation. And so this morning I'm going to be doing the fall budget briefing, which is my chance to tell you how we finalized our 22-23 budget. So that's this year's budget. And that gives us a chance to talk about where we are today before we start talking about where we're going in the future. So it's sort of level setting and letting you all know where we are now so we can talk about where we're going. Today, I'm going to talk about primarily our campus budget, which is our budget that is composed mostly of our state allocation revenue, our student tuition revenue, and our cost recovery revenue. I'm going to start talking about the final state budget and its impacts on our campus budget. So every year in the fall, the CSU Board of Trustees puts together a request to ask the state for an increase to the CSU base budget. Last fall, we were, as a system, emerging from the most major impacts of the pandemic. And so the Board of Trustees put together a very ambitious budget request. They focused on three main initiatives. First, our students. They requested $75 million of increased funds for graduation initiative, $20 million for basic needs, and $75 million for technology. The second initiative was our people. They asked for $223 million for increases to employee compensation. And the third was the future of the CSU. They asked for funding to improve our academic facilities and infrastructure. They asked for $129 million for strategic enrollment growth across the system, and for funding for mandatory cost increases and to pay for legislative requirements. That's all the column on the left. And the total request was $715.5 million. The column on the right is the final state budget, the funding we did get from the state for the 22-23 year. We got $407.9 million. And so we did receive $35 million for the graduation initiative, $10 million for basic needs, and a new baseline item that we've never received ongoing funding for, which is $12 million for foster youth support programming. So we've received one-time funding for this program before, but never base funding. So what that means is we'll have recurring funding to provide ongoing support for this program. The bulk of the funding that we received this year was 211 of unallocated increase. And what that means is when the state gave it to us, they didn't designate what the CSU had to spend it on. And that's the lavender box there on the right-hand column. But as you can see, the lavender box is pretty close in size to the teal box there on the left-hand side, which is the funding we requested for employee compensation. So when we finalized our bargaining agreements for this year, we, in the system, used that $211 million of unallocated funding for our employee compensation increases. So what does all of this mean for our campus? So looking at our campus budgeted revenue, our prior year budgeted revenue was $136.3 million. And we did get increased funding from the CSU to fund those employee salary increases and benefits increases, and that was $7.2 million. We also got new funding for that foster youth program. That's $288,000. We also had some revenue decreases. So for financial aid in the CSU, for every dollar that a student pays in tuition, 1/3 of it is set aside for financial aid. And those funds are managed at a system-wide level. So every year they do an analysis to determine where the students are, what campus they're at, and how much need they have. And this year it was determined that our students had less proportional need than students at other campuses. So this funding was removed from our campus and redistributed to other campuses to be allocated to their students as financial aid. We also made some adjustments to our own revenue budgets aside from the state allocation adjustments. So this is partially tuition revenue due to continued decrease in headcount, and partially cost allocation revenue because our self-support and auxiliary partners pay us to support them in things like facilities, financial services. They have been impacted by the pandemic and enrollment reductions, and so they're doing less activity, and so they pay us back less revenue. With all those adjustments, our campus budgeted revenue for 2022-2023 is $137.9 million. This slide shows how we allocate our expenses out by division. You can see that academic affairs is over half of the budget with 56.2%. Administration and finance is 21%. University-wide, which pays some of the university's bills like insurance premiums, rent, utilities, is about 14%. Student affairs is 3.8%. The president's office is 2.2%. Advancement is 1.6%, and the Green Music Center is 1.1%. The important thing to notice on this slide is that the expenditure budget is $151.8 million, which is higher than the revenue budget I just told you about on the last slide. And when your expenses are higher than your revenues, that means you're operating in a shortfall or deficit position. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. First, we've been talking a lot about the campus budget already this morning, and I do want to point out before I move on that we have a lot of other activity going on campus. So this slide represents all of our full university budgeted revenue. We have our parking budget, our auxiliary budgets like Sonoma State Enterprises and associated students. We have housing, we have a lot of campus fee funds. So we have a lot of activity on campus. A lot of these areas have also been impacted by enrollment decline rather, but our total university budgeted resources for the year are $220 million. Also a note, both of these budget reports are available in our open book budget portal at budget.sonoma.edu. So returning to the discussion of our campus deficit. When talking about our campus budget, it's important to understand the impact of enrollment decline. This chart shows our annualized headcount from 2010-11 to the current year projection. You can see that Sonoma State has had a long period of steady increase in our headcount until we started experiencing a slight decline in 2017-18. The first year that we had a larger decline was 2019-20. From the 4 years beginning in 2018-19 to the current year, we have lost almost 2,700 head count, and that results in lost tuition revenue of about $15 million. So as I mentioned earlier, our expenses this year are higher than our revenues, resulting in a deficit of $13.9 million. This is a base deficit. What that means is these are ongoing funds that are recurring, and this deficit doesn't go away unless we address it. So this shows the adjustments to the base that are affecting the deficit for this year. It's a lot of detail, but essentially we started the year with a base deficit of $11.2 million from the 21-22 deficit. We had this deficit last year, and we resolved the deficit and balanced the year using all one-time funds. So we had a lot of the higher education emergency relief funds last year. We used operating fund reserves. And so we didn't take any reductions, base reductions last year. So that $11.2 million base deficit is our starting point for this year. Then we took some revenue reductions that I talked about earlier, the tuition reduction, the cost allocation reduction, and some slight reductions in other revenue. We also had increases to expenses. So costs are going up everywhere. They're going up for the university as well. Increases in insurance premiums, increases in rent, increases in energy costs. We also have increases to our compensation and health lines that weren't funded by the state, minimum wage is going up, those types of things. This year, we did take a budget reduction. So there were base reductions to the divisions, and the net impact of all of those changes totals the $13.9 million deficit that we have today. We also had some one-time costs that we need to cover this year as well. The one-time pandemic stipends that were received by our employees due to bargaining agreements were mandated, but they were unfunded. So we needed to find funds on campus to cover those as well. So that brought our current year deficit to $15.9 million. The good news is that we have a funding plan to cover those costs and balance this year's deficit. All of these strategies are one-time strategies, which means that the $13.9 million base deficit will be our starting point for our funding plan next year. So we started looking at strategies from a university-wide perspective. We earn revenue on interest revenue on the tuition revenue that we collect from students. So we're utilizing a portion of that interest revenue for our deficit plan this year. We had deficit strategies that we used to close last year's deficit, and those were very successful strategies. We had excess funds, so we rolled those excess funds to use for this year's deficit plan. We're using the remainder of our higher education emergency relief or pandemic stimulus funds for this year's deficit plan. That will be the last of what we have to use. For the past couple of years in our deficit plan, we've also accessed our university operating reserves. So we're doing the same strategy this year, and we're also accessing our capital reserves as well. And we're using similar strategies we've used in the past as well, sweeping hiring slowdown savings to the center to use towards the deficit, and then holding new funding that we receive from the state centrally and accruing those savings until the positions are hired or those funds are needed in the divisions. So those strategies collectively netted us about $8.9 million, and we still needed another $7 million to close the deficit. So then we looked to the division funds. The first line on the division fund strategies is the academic affairs one-time reduction. So this is a portion of the academic affairs base budget reduction. Every division this year needed to take a base reduction. Academic affairs was able to take a portion of their base reduction in the base and a portion in one time. For academic affairs, it's particularly difficult to take a base reduction in a short amount of time because of mounting the course schedule and providing curriculum. So that division needed a longer period of time to take a base reduction. So they're providing funds this year for that base reduction in one time. This one-time reduction will be converted to a base reduction next year. The rest of these one-time funding strategies are division funds that are roll forward funds from the division. So each division has needs and priorities that they would love to spend this money on, but knowing that we have a university deficit, each vice president needed to go back and review their priorities again, and we're able to provide funds back to the deficit plan so that we were able to balance the budget and close the deficit for this year. I wanted to take some time and go over the composition of the deficit. So I get a question a lot of how did we get here? How did we end up in a deficit? And what is in the deficit? So I went over a slide of what adjustments we made this year that created the deficit. And I want to make it clear that our budget in 2019-2020 was balanced, and we really started experiencing a deficit in 2020. So this slide shows the cumulative effects and changes to the campus budget starting in that 2020 year that have created the deficit. The first one is the $15 million that I talked about of our tuition revenue loss due to our drop in headcount. The second two lines, we received a budget reduction from the state in 2020, 2021, and then they restored it. They were off by $217, and so that's why that's hanging out there. They gave us $217 extra. But then on the third line, they held back 3.3 million of it to put into compensation. So they didn't really give us all of it back. They essentially cut our restoration of our budget reduction to fund our compensation pool. So they called it a redirection, but it's essentially in a net, it's a net reduction. So that was a 3.3 million of unfunded that we had to cover from other places. We have other revenue reductions. Most of this is reductions to our cost allocation funding as we implement our new cost allocation plan and as our self-support and auxiliary partners reduce their activity due to the pandemic and due to reducing enrollment. We also, just like this year, have had cumulative years of unfunded mandatory cost increases related to salary and benefits. And finally, we have several areas of campus underfunded costs. So these are, again, things like utilities and our insurance premiums that we have had to fund year over year. We have been taking strides to combat this. We've had 2 years of budget reductions, first in 2021, and this year in 2022, 2023. So we've taken $13.4 million of budget reductions. And over time, the net effect of that is the $13.9 million base deficit that we have today. So we have a lot of resources. A lot of these reports are available, like I said, at our open book portal, at our budget.sonoma.edu website. Please feel free, as always, to contact us with questions. But really the most important part of this conversation, like President Lee said, is what are we going to do about this? So for that part of the conversation, I'm going to turn it back over to him, as well as Provost Moransky and Vice President Ahmed. Thank you so much. I hope this has been helpful.
Let's give Laura another round of applause. She's one of the best I've seen, able to present this picture in such a calm and matter-of-fact way. It's not easy, I tell you. It's for people who work with numbers all day long and be able to really present in such a manner. It's really the foundation how we are able to actually get through this tough period of time. And I don't like to stand up there because I'm used to kind of classroom atmosphere to kind of speak at the same level. And this is not only the way I like it, but I think symbolically it's also important. We are in this together. I'm not out of it. None of the cabinet members out of it. This is our university, and we're gonna have to see through, see what we can do. Okay, so what I'd like to do is I'd like to share with you a preliminary plan. It's kind of a plan with some options, and some of the elements in these options has already been put into place, and I'll cover that quickly. But I want to make sure that all those people who choose to watch this online are able to see me, and I apologize in advance because I'm going to walk, you know, kind of left and right, back and forth, and hope that you can still see me. But I promise not to go out of the area, so I'll be out of sight. But anyway, this particular plan has really two components, big component. Clearly, as you can see from Laura's presentation, our revenue to a large part is connected to our enrollment. It's connected because a big portion of our university budget come from the enrollment base. And the system set a target of full-time equivalent students that we need to reach. And we have not reached that, as you can imagine, in the last 3-4 years. But as state continue, or I should say CSU continue to fund us at that level, but they certainly have all the authority to actually recalculate that. Okay, and again, we will be fighting very hard to make sure that number one, it doesn't happen that way. If it does, we are able to put the university in a solid, better position. But I do need to share with you that particular component of our funding. And secondly, the university keeps the tuition and fees as well. And that's roughly about $5,500 per student. I'm never comfortable equating student with a number because they're all individual human beings. However, on financial counts budget, it is $5,500 per student head count. So you can roughly do this in your head. 2 additional students is about $11,000. 200 additional students is 1.1 million. All right. Now, can we lose 200 students very quickly? Yes, we can. If we don't do our job in retention, we don't do our job in recruiting, that can happen. But on the other hand, if the market is right, if the environment is right, and we do our best, and we know the parameter, we drill down to the high school, to the community colleges, is additional 200 students difficult? Not necessary. Okay, I have seen universities actually get 500 or even 1,000 or even more. So it's a matter of if we are really, really trying hard enough to reach down to every single possible student that we can bring in. And you can roughly calculate how much that can help. But that is not the only revenue coming in. Every additional student also will potentially and hopefully live on campus, like myself and my wife. And we eat in a cafeteria. And you spend money here. All of those contribute to additional revenue to the university, and they're all important. They're all important. So I think it's very clear. I need to put that forward because the provost is gonna share with you some of the not only plan, but plans that have already been implemented, and we already seen some outcomes. So we're gonna talk about that, and then I will also very quickly share with you, and some of you already know this, about some of the actions or options that we're gonna implement to help us get through this next couple of years. So let's go to the next one. All right. So at this point, I'd like to have Provost Karen Marinsky to share with us the enrollment plan.
Thank you so much, President Lee, and welcome to everyone today, both those of you who are here in the audience and those of you who are joining us in our online audience. We're glad to have all of you here today. So I'm talking a little bit about enrollment I have said this in various forums, and I'm going to say it again today. The difficulty that we're in with regard to enrollment is that we are graduating more students than we're bringing in. We're doing a really good job with our graduation initiative 2025. We have done a good job, and that has meant that we graduate a lot of students every May. And for the last 3 years, we're graduating more students than we're bringing in. That's going to change after this year because we will begin to see smaller classes graduating, and hopefully, and the signs are good that we're seeing more students coming in at the front end. So we had, for the first time in 3 years, an increase in first year enrollment this year. So that's a very good sign. that the strategic enrollment management team under the fine direction of Elias Lopez is having an impact. The president mentioned that there are some good signs. That's one of those good signs. Another good sign that we got just this week is that for spring 2023, we have met our deposit target of 400 students, which then allows us to meet our enrollment target of 350 students for spring. So meeting those targets is a critical pathway to getting back into a positive arena for our enrollment. So those are some good pieces of news. But we have that one big class that's headed to graduate this year. And by golly, we want to make sure that every single one of those students gets graduated, because that's what's really important, is getting our students here, keeping them here, and graduating them in a timely fashion. But next year we will see another decline because those, again, that graduation rate is bigger than our new student enrollment. We need a series of successive years of steadily increasing new student enrollment. And that's been the focus of the development of our strategic enrollment management plan. Our top priorities are a marketing plan, increasing yield rates, outreach, new student recruitment, and retention. And let me talk a little bit about marketing. We have an RFP in the works that's going to bring us some consulting help with a marketing plan. All of us know that we're not doing as good a job as we need to do of telling our story, of telling people who we are. It's the hidden gem problem, and that hidden has to go away. We're just a gym. We're a great gym. We're a fantastic gym, and we have to tell that story. We also have to work on getting more students who apply and deposit to enroll. We have been able to be complacent about that in the past and say, oh, we're going to get enough. If we get 20,000 applications, we'll get enough. Well, we stopped getting 20,000 applications and we didn't improve our yield rate. We didn't improve the number of students who took us up on our offer and deposited and then came. So we've got to do that work too. And then we have to work on retention. Shockingly and interestingly, our students stayed during the pandemic. They stayed, they graduated, they kept taking classes. They're amazing for having done that. And so our retention went up during the pandemic. But this past spring, as people were coming out of the pandemic and really trying to figure out what they're doing and whether school is right for them, whether they can afford school, whether they have to work 40 or 50 hours a week in order to make ends meet for themselves and their family, we lost students in spring, between spring and this fall. So we need to, we're looking into that, finding out what happened, and then we need to make sure that it doesn't happen this next spring. So retention is key. All right. And so we've got a whole slew of strategies that are all being implemented right now. So this, as the president indicated, is not a plan that's just, a plan, right? A kind of vague plan. This is what we're doing right now. So we are deploying recruitment scholarships that have had a really big impact. Without those recruiting scholarships that we've been able to offer to students as they come into the campus, especially our transfer students, we would be in much worse shape. So those have helped us tremendously with yield. We need to find ways to expand those. We need to find ways to do other kinds of scholarships so that we're able to help students from Southern California to see themselves as being able to afford coming to Northern California. We don't have the population base in Northern California. And so we got to bring them from outside our region. And the only way to do that is to help them with the finances of going to college. We need to leverage our campus tours. You're going to see some stats in a minute. But if we can get students to campus, they love it, right? What's not to love? The president is living here, right? Everybody loves it. And so it is a beautiful campus. It is a warm and inviting campus. And we need to get students here so they can see themselves here for 4 years or 2 years, or however long they're here. We've got to improve our website. And we're working with the UC Davis as consultants to try to do that. We've got to invest in new technologies. We are in the process of implementing, finalizing the contract and implementing a new customer relationship management software that allows all of us to connect with those students in multiple ways as they start to inquire and apply to us. And it's a way of making sure that we're connected to them. We need to develop guaranteed admissions programs. And Elias Lopez has been traveling the state, talking with people, talking with high schools and with community colleges about guaranteed admissions program. The president has been meeting with high schools and superintendents in school districts and community college presidents to try to develop those guaranteed admissions programs. And we need to re-engage and re-enroll underserved students. So our registrar, Sean Johnson, is in the process of having his office contact over 1,600 students who have stopped out over the last several years at Sonoma State to offer them an opportunity to come back and a smooth pathway to doing that so that it's easy for them to come back and finish that degree. All right. So some of our current outreach work that's being done under Rich Toledo and his team, we are engaging with 96 high schools that have sent us 30 or more students over the last several years. We're engaging with more high schools than that, but we are particularly working on developing really tight relationships with those high schools and their guidance counselors. We have 60 school visits for just this fall. You've seen them on campus. They're wandering around in pods, right? And being shown the wonders of Sonoma State. So reach out and say hi. Right? Say hi and welcome. And we're glad to have you here. We gave one of those students a beanie the other day, and it made his day. He was so happy. And Ian, where's Ian? There he is, found a beanie for him. And, again, this is the kind of thing that can make a student decide to come to Sonoma State. So reach out when you see these students on campus. We've had 431 family visit tours this fall. So again, that's the kind of work that's being done. And we're buying the names of high school and potential graduate students, and conducting a lot of digital campaigns. We're in constant contact with these students. Many of you know, we didn't do that before. We only started doing that in the last 2-3 years. And so that's part of what's making a difference and why we're beginning to see increases, particularly in first year student numbers. All right. And I'm going to turn back over to Munir Ahmed, our Vice President for Administration and Finance. He's going to talk a little bit about multi-year budget planning. Thank you,
Karen. Thank you. Thank you. So, as you may have noticed, the provost has the harder lift to do. reach individual students and families one at a time to make the difference. That makes our Laura and my job easier, right? There are, I think I shared with this group last budget forum, there are two sides to an equation. It's the revenue side and the expenditure side. The effort you are seeing here that we're bringing forward in the way of ideas, as President Lee mentioned, and want to hear more to fine tune that balancing point, what we want to be. So of course, on the revenue side, we have to find ways of increasing that revenue, that number. There are three components, but really primarily two components of the revenue. One is the state appropriation, the other is the tuition portion. And then the campus revenue part, as Laura said, this is in the cost recovery. So the revenue enhancement side, we have control on enrollment that ties into state appropriation, as well as our tuition piece of it. That's what the provost shared with you. Internally, we are also doing some rebalancing that is to give a lift. We have traditionally on campus for the last, I think, 3 or 4 years have held summer as a self-support. We are moving it to the state side. That's the plan the provost and the team is working on. And the reason for that is, again, to give it a lift to quickly meet the target of the state, so the appropriation portion stays intact. We also are looking for ways like online degree programs, various other programs, and ending impaction to increase the revenue along with the enrollment plan so that more people can come. The choices are more open, right? We also are looking for other assets we have on campus that may not be performing optimally for us. Housing has come through. We have now faculty, in addition to the president, he has faculty as neighbors along with the students. We still have capacity left. We're looking for ways how to partner with other institutions such as the local junior college, or creating opportunity for students, more students that are coming from out of areas to make housing more affordable for them. So that will also hopefully help us bringing in, attracting more students to the campus. At the same time, we are also looking for ancillary activities such as increased grant, increased private support, as well as things that may come one time but help. This is the right time to do infrastructure improvement. The campus is aging, as many of you know. So you will see we are digging up some of the parts, we are blocking traffics and doing all this. One is we need to have the facility ready when the increase happens, when the student comes, so that we don't have to have downtime in classrooms or lose powers and so forth. That's happening. We're also looking for sustainable ways to reduce our expenses, increase our energy. Next summer, you will see, we'll start the construction for the first solar project on campus that will bring campus about 1/3 of its energy from sustainable resources. Not only is it a good thing to do from a community impact perspective, but it also is an economically sound thing to do. It reduces our energy cost over the next 30 years. With a long-term contract, it's almost fixed price utility cost, right? So this is happening on the revenue side, but I'm going to share with you these boxes that you all have seen a little bit on the expense side. Again, all ships has to rise at the same time. So while we are trying to bring up the revenue side, we also have to rebalance our needs and our priorities and readjust what we can be. And that is into, I think in Laura's presentation, she mentioned that the 3 categories, 3 components of its people, its facilities, and it's our program. Part of the program is what Provost is talking about, realigning our offerings, grouping into better ways of delivering the services we have to deliver to our students, to bring them in, keep them and graduate them on time, let them out for the workforce on time. On the people side, I think on the first Tuesday, you have seen one of the efforts went out that we, as President mentioned, as you all have seen throughout various forums, that we really want to have a conversation, want to make it as painless, as effective as we can by having a conversation. So the announcement went out with staffing realignment by using voluntary exit program. That's one of the initiative that's underway. We also are throughout the campus doing some administrative reorganization in the work share services, so that as we are looking for ways to improve efficiency, we also want to deliver quality service. So we are trying to regroup how we deliver services. We're trying to build shared services throughout the campus. We're also trying to reduce administrative burden by automation. Concar, about half the people are using it. We are looking into a system-wide initiative of automating our procurement systems to reduce burden to deliver better services. We also are looking at the way we manage our facilities and the grounds and so forth, and prioritizing where the classroom happens. It needs to be in the best of the conditions, where the buildings that are not used as highly, maybe not as much time needs to be spent. We are also trying to relocate programs. We have some off-campus facilities we are bringing services that we're bringing on campus so that we can save on our rental cost. We'll continue to again look for rearranging the programs throughout administrative academics areas to find ways for improving services. One other element, and I'm going to stop there because President wants us to have more interactions, save time to talk about. We are one of the highly visible campus in everything shared system-wide, as well as with the community. We have a number of programs that we have partnered with local agencies here. We do not run our E911 emergency system, but rather partner with local cities because it's identical services, it provides improved quality services, it reduces costs for us and the local governments. We outsource our fire services. Many larger campuses have their own, but we contract many other services. In fact, yesterday, we met with all the local managers and the fire chiefs and the police chiefs to continue to have this discussion to say, how can we as a community come together? This is a university for the community in the community. We want to come together and improve services and partner more with that. So these are the other initiatives you will continue to see coming in. Many of them are in the planning stage. Some of them are already being implemented. With the goal, at the end, we'll balance our revenue to our expenses and we'll continue to grow from there. So I would actually like to stop here so that we can open up for more dialogue.
Thank you. Well, let's not, thank you, Mania, I really appreciate it. Let's not lose sight before I begin the question and answer, okay? Let's not lose sight of what this university has accomplished. I think that's very, very important. I know there are difficult things that we have to go. Number one, we continue to be the top, and top, I mean either number one or number two in the entire CSU system for transfer student graduation rate. And that's a tremendous accomplishment. And one of the very difficult accomplishment for graduation is the 4-year graduation rate. CSU has been really considered a 6-year graduation institution, but this university is now number 3 in the entire CSU system as a 4-year graduation rate. And even more remarkably, a very, very stubborn measurement of accomplishment of graduation is how well your underrepresented minority are making progress to graduation. The system-wide level, the gap is 12 points, and it has not budged in the last 10 years. This university, Sonoma State University, our gap is practically 0. Every student who comes through the door are able to get the quality education that they deserve, and they're able to make the progress to graduation. That is remarkable. I have 28 years in Sac State. I work extremely hard trying to get even close, not able to make it. It is so stubborn, but this university made it. So I don't want anyone to lose sight of all the good things that we have done. And it's not one person's work that make the difference. It's all of you, all faculty, all staff, all students who are willing to work hard and come in. So let me put that in front of everybody so we don't lose sight of all the good things that we have done, even in difficult situation. And all this achievement that we're able to achieve in the past few years So I think it's very important to keep that in mind. And clearly you can see from the provost and the vice president and CFO's statement that this is an all hands on deck mission right now. Everybody's working hard trying to bring more students in. Everybody's working hard trying to make sure that we're able to give them the top quality education and retain the students so that they can graduate and be able to go on their career. Like many of you who graduate from here and choose to stay. I had a chance to meet many of you, and I'm very, very impressed how many of our staff actually are students, alums, and choose to stay here. Of course, this is a beautiful place, right? Who wouldn't want to be here? But we need to get them here to see that. And as a newcomer to this community, every time I drive on Petaluma Hill, I couldn't really see where Sonoma State is. Of course, I know because I live here, but you can imagine anybody just drive by, you would not see it. The only sign you see on Petaluma Hill is that tiny blue sign says SSU receiving. That kind of show you, you're in SSU. Of course, you have to know what SSU means first, right? Otherwise, you say Sue. What's that? But anyway, it is important for us to really keep on working. And actually, Provost, myself, and Elias, we will be meeting with the Los Angeles Community District. I met with the chancellor, and we'll be meeting with the president. That district alone has 9 community colleges in Los Angeles, and that has 200,000 students. 200,000 students. We're not greedy, right? We need only about, let's say, 5% or a little bit less than, we'll be fine. But joking aside, it's really, really an all hand on deck effort. And Mania mentioned about this campus is aging. That got me kind of a little bit worried because I happen to be the same age as this university. I was born in 1961. So to say that the campus is aging is like, I'm aging, yeah. But I'm trying to take good care of myself like the university is doing. But I think it's critical that you have opportunity to really ask us questions and we're able to share with you. So it's not all us talking to you all the time because that's no fun. And that's not what a professor like to do, right? We need to a little bit. So right now, I'd like to open up and we have microphone ready. And we also have, if anybody who are online watching this, you can ask questions by chat. And I think Mike, you're gonna ask questions. So everybody have a chance to ask whatever question you want. There's no hard question. There's no tough question. And anything I know or I'm willing to think about, I will let you know. Okay, please go ahead.
Hello.
Neil.
Yeah, we actually have 148 people joining us online today.
Oh,
so
wow.
Big crowd. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
And I'll just start with a question there so they know they're certainly in our minds. And Dr. Lee, if you know this question, you're going to be the big winner for the day.
The lottery number, 1.4 billion?
That's right.
Okay, I don't know that yet.
How many recruiters does SSU have?
I know the answer, but
So we currently have 3 with 1 being rehired. So we just lost a recruiter, so we're hiring a 4th. We are also in conversation about hiring another Southern California recruiter. So we'd end up with 5 recruiters plus Rich Toledo, who is our director of outreach.
we have what, 4 recruiters right now? Well, if you count myself and the provost and others, we had numerous. We all recruited, but we're all ambassadors of universities. Don't forget that. Don't forget that, right? Your neighbor, your friend, your relative, your classmate, they're all potentially could send their kids to Sonoma State. We have people in this audience who have sent 2 of your kids to Sonoma State. We all can be recruited. Yeah, Ned.
Good morning, Dr. Lee. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I have questions from my faculty colleagues, and this came up during the open forum that was hosted by the CFA. We saw that one of the proposals is the reorganization of schools and departments. So faculty have been asking for clarity on what does reorganization exactly mean and how exactly will that save money for the university. Also, there's concern about the smaller departments who are that are valuable to the mission of the university, but may not have enough majors, but still doing a lot of providing a lot of FTEs. So how will they be? How will that be factored in decision making so far as reorganization is concerned?
Thank you for the question. This is actually a very, very good question. Very important one. Very important one. But let me, and I know the provost would have some answer, but let me really share with you my thought about this. Okay. I think, as you can see, organization related measures is only one of many, many different things we're doing. But organization refreshing, if I put it that way, serve more than budget purposes. Periodically, every university, every organization should go through some thinking about what we do, how we do it, and are there better way to get there? Okay. And it's not always about personnel. It's really a lot of time it's about our function that we provide. And are there ways that we can get better? So think about it. Even as we are doing all these things, we continue to have students who have difficulty getting certain classes in order to allow them to graduate. And as a parent or as anybody who have gone through college, you understand that when you sign up for a particular major, there are certain classes that you are required to take. And the worst nightmare is that you have only a few left to graduate, and then you're not able to sign up to a class that you needed. It's devastating to our students. So we need to not only look at budget, but also whether or not we are able to provide the courses to all the students. So you can imagine a low enroll major, if the number is very, very small. Let's say you have only 3. I know I'm exaggerating. If you have only 3 students in your major, but we have obligation to every single one of these 3 students to get them courses so they can graduate. But you can imagine if I offer classes that have 3 students in there, and my colleague in the next door is teaching 300, you tell me, is that a good or fair situation? But other than that, I would let Provost to talk about what's happening.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, and it's a great question. And I think part of what we're doing with the academic master plan and with the working groups and with the people who are participating, the town halls, the forums, the surveys, is to get ideas from the campus about how to do that reorganization. So it's not just about the provost saying, this is the way we're going to reorganize. That's not actually a recipe, as we have seen, for good governance. And so we need to allow the process and the conversations to happen to figure out how those reorganizations are going to happen. But they could happen at multiple levels. As the president is suggesting, they could happen with curriculum, and the way faculty might want to revisit curriculum, refresh curriculum. We've been working on that with the Teagle Foundation for the last 3 years, doing some amazing reorganization of curriculum that's related to student success and to closing the equity gap. And so that's good work. We can also look at how we are organized in terms of departments. We can look, yes, I'm going to say it, at how we organize by school and see if we're organized in ways that allow us to really move forward as a campus. The idea is to move forward and to serve our students better. And to create the opportunity for some of the things that faculty have been telling me since I got here 6.5 years ago that they want, including interdisciplinarity and new ways of looking at at new majors that are coming, to us, that our students may have said they wanted, that students across the state are looking for at Sonoma State and not finding right now. So we have opportunities to do some things. Now is the moment. But to the second question that Knapp asked, which is, what happens to those low enrolled majors? And yes, we need to look at those, but we may have a major that has relatively few students who are majoring, but they may be a powerhouse in general education, right? Teaching a great many general education courses. And one of the things that is so important is that we put that together, right? That whole picture together, so that we're not just counting majors and saying, oh, you don't have enough majors. We've got to look at mission. We've got to look at GE. We've got to look at service. And we've got to really figure out how to empower people to get more students into the campus and into the majors. And it may mean changing some of what we do in the majors. It may mean that we combine some majors. So there are lots of possibilities, and I'm frankly not going to shy away from any of those, because I think we need to think about all of them and encourage our faculty and our students and our staff to think about all the possibilities, because possibility is a really nice thing to be able to contemplate. So it isn't just about budget cuts, it's about where we go academically on this campus.
Well, keep in mind that faculty are the keepers of university curriculum. It's really in your hands. And all I can say, I urge all the faculty members, please, as you think about all of these matters, make sure you think about the students. We are the keeper of curriculum, but students are the ones who will live the consequences. So I think if we put that in our mind, any change that we put in, create obligation on the student side. We all think about that, it will be a much stronger, much better university. And keep in mind, those students one day could be sitting here as a staff, as a leader of this university. So we're doing things for the future generation. Way after we leave this institution, the impact will be tremendous. But I really encourage everybody to participate, please. Even though the provost is leading the effort, but everybody really need to participate and think about it. And keep in mind, do not take any one particular component out of context. There's a lot of elements to this picture. So we got to, a lot of time think with all the different components together. Okay, next question.
I have a question back.
Yeah, please.
Hi, I'm Kasia Tria with the payroll department, but this question is going to be based off of being the chief steward for the CSU EU union. In Laura's presentation, which is amazing, and I want her to budget my household stuff, but I'm curious because it was mentioned for bargaining unit increases and the bonuses. However, I'm pretty sure management also received that. So where in the line item is that? Is that included in that entire line item? Okay.
That's
So
correct,
it.
she said.
Okay.
Thank you for the question. You can clearly see payroll, the payments to your salary and any increase is one of the #1 obligation. We absolutely have to cover that. And so that's what we did, even though it's unfunded, but it does add to the picture that we have to deal with. Yeah.
I'm going to ask another question online, and it has to do with retention. And what is the university doing to help students struggling academically?
That sounds like another provost question. Okay.
Great question. So over the last 6 years of the graduation initiative, we have been building services, and I want to shout out to my colleague, the Vice President for Student Affairs, Gerald Jones, who has been at the center of much of that. The building of CASE, the Center for Academic say it. And Center for Academic Access and Student Enrichment.
Yes.
Got it.
Case.
I don't want to get it wrong. But case, we all know it as case now. And so that unit, which encompasses a number of important services for our low income students, for our first generation students, for our underrepresented student populations, our foster youth, all of that is really critical. And Gerald, do you want to come and talk a little bit about student services? Come on up,
Absolutely.
join me.
Like she was talking about my shop.
I know.
So as Karen mentioned, we created the case back in 2018, and that was an opportunity for us to co-locate all of our student support services in one area. So our EOP program, which worked with low-income first-generation students, our TRIO student support service programs, our CWA Scholars, which worked with our current and former foster youth, our DSS program, and then our Porta program, which worked with our students that have an interest in going into teaching, our Latinx students. So that program has been very successful in providing support for our students. We also have a number of funding opportunities through the Kalmanovitz grant, which provides financial assistance for our students in need. We have worked very hard to build out our Summer Bridge program, which is a program to help students transition into Sonoma State University, low-income first-generation students. One of the things that we've been able to do there is to increase our class offerings so students are able to take 6 units of academic credit in Native American Studies, what is it? Math and English.
Mm-hmm.
And so the beauty there is that the students get an opportunity to earn 6 units towards their baccalaureate degree while also getting the confidence to know that they can do successful at college work. We also provide the students with a $1,000 instructional kind of scholarship to assist with their schooling. One of the things that we've been able to do throughout COVID was to really provide all of our underrepresented, underserved students with the technology support that they need to be successful. So we provided students with laptops, with Chromebooks, with noise canceling headphones, with hotspots. So the things that really let them be able to participate at the same level as their peers and be successful during the pandemic. So we do a whole lot in support of our students, not just with our CASE program, but just university-wide, working with our associated students. One of the things that I just want to really brag about with our students here really quickly is when we receive monies from the federal government, for our students, it excluded our undocumented students. Right. But our associated students wanted to make sure that all of our students were whole. And so they stepped to the plate to make sure that all of our undocumented students receive the same financial support as other students on this campus. And so that really just speaks to the community that we have here at Sonoma State University to make sure that everyone is whole and everyone has the same opportunities to be successful. So.
Thank you. And let's give Gerald a hand for all the work that he's done. And the data demonstrate that kind of intensive support actually does raise retention rates on this campus. So we're able to compare and know that intensive services really do help students to stay and to graduate. We've got to make sure as we move forward that we expand. And we're doing that in so many ways in the schools, with faculty initiatives, with initiatives like our MESA program in the School of Science and Tech, with our Learning and Academic Resource Center, with our Advising Center in Student Affairs. All of these services, one of the things we actually do really well is provide services. And we need to make sure that every student has access and uses those services to the full extent so that we can retain them.
But let's also keep in mind that this is really a national phenomenon right now. As a country, we have about 14 million students in higher education in the United States. In the last 2 years, there's a reduction of 1.4 million. That's about 10%. So you can imagine that we are really fighting that battle. But keep in mind, all these programs aside, every one of you is a retention factor. Like every professor teaching in the classroom, every staff that come in contact with a student providing service, we are playing a big role in retention. So let's keep that in mind. It's very, very critical, including myself as a president of the university. Next question.
Yeah.
Yes, Stefan?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very heartened by the news that we will have a marketing campaign because, as you observed, SSU has been a little bit hard to find. So that's really good news. But to me, it seems that the one product we offer is really the classroom and advising. That's really the only thing we have. We have great dorms. We have some very beautiful facilities, and that gets people here. But that's not why people are staying. And I'm worried really a lot because we have a hiring freeze. And not only are we having difficulty mounting very important classes to our majors, but the advising falls short. We don't have a large lecturer budget anymore, and it seems it will be cut further. We have lost a lot of faculty, even in very big departments. Faculty have shrunk, have left, are FERPing, and it's getting harder and harder to really keep up the standard of the product, of having classes that are interesting to students and advise them in a really good way. Like where, for example, I teach creative writing. I would have to advise about 80 to 100 students, like to do really the job. My colleagues are helping out, but it's not an ideal solution. And I get we're in a budget crisis. Still, with the ongoing hiring freeze, we're killing departments and we're killing programs and we're lessening the product we can actually sell, and that makes people stay. Thank you.
I absolutely hear you, and I feel it every single day. It is not an easy situation. I mean, to say the least. And I have, unfortunately, in the past, have experienced, have seen situation like this as well in other CSU campus. Do I have a magic wand that I can just wave and make this all go away? I don't. And I certainly don't have the number that will win me the $1.4 billion. But that aside, anytime when we have to deal with a budget shortfall situation, a very immediate and natural reaction is to cut across the board. So we ended up with taking $1, try to spread it over 100 programs, and everybody gets a penny. And that's a very natural thing to do, but it's not a solution. We really, really need to look at each program and look at its role in the overall university's mission and vision. And let's keep in mind, this is and continue to be a strong liberal arts and science institution. Let's not lose sight of that. And if we keep that in mind and be able to articulate what that means to our students, to our parents, we are able to use that as our advantage. But I also want to be very, very mindful about liberal art education. Liberal and science education does not necessarily mean that all students have to major in liberal art majors. And this, in my mind, is a solid foundation that every student should have. So they speak better, they write better, they are critical thinkers, they care about their environment, they care about the society, and they are more creative, and they are better equipped to learn throughout the entire life. I benefit from that myself. My undergraduate major was literature. To this day, I continue to use that to help me, honestly, to get through this tough time. If you read a lot of literatures in your life, read a lot of dramas in your life, you are better equipped to go through the tough time and come up stronger. If you are a philosophy student, you learn how to take yourself to that different space, allow you to calm down and be able to navigate through difficulty in life. Absolutely, Stefan, you are doing great thing for university. Not only you are advising more students, you also take over responsibility in a different department. And we have a lot of people here and actually online doing the same thing. We have many, many people put on different hats because we need to. If I tell you this next 2 years can be easy, like walk in the park, I'm lying to you. It will be difficult. But one thing I've been saying, and I'll do it, is that we will try our best to minimize the impact on people's life. And that is why we are doing this voluntary separation incentive program, because I want people to think about what's your plan for life? What do you want to do? Provide a little bit of incentive so people have a chance to make that choice. I have no idea what is going to come out. I really have no idea how the chip's going to fall. But when we know how it actually falls, we as a university are going to come together and think about how we better organize ourselves and how we can navigate through this next 2 years. And again, I will try my best to go to the chancellor office, to go talk to my counterpart, to go to the chancellor, to try as much as I can to get us through this next year. But everybody has to work together. But you can imagine here, the better we can do in retaining students and bringing students, the lesser an impact we have. And I really do not want to continue not hire new faculty. Faculty is the soul and the core. How can you have a great university and not have great faculty? Of course you cannot. But I also understand very well how nature sometimes goes through certain cycles. And we happen to be in that down cycle, they will come up. I think the market is going to turn. I'm naturally a more optimistic person, but I'm also looking at reality. We are now coming out of pandemic. Yes, inflation is very high, but economics, like everything, it has a cycle. We'll come out of it. And with all the effort we're putting in recruitment and retention, we are going to see most students come through the door. And the very monetary part of my brain started counting, 2 students makes 11,000 plus. We can make it. Again, it could be painful, but I'd like to try my best to make sure that we get through this by providing with as many options as possible. Are they difficult decisions to make? Absolutely. But I continue to tell myself I need to keep my eyes on the final prize. The final prize is a bigger, a better, and stronger. May not be bigger, Soroma State University. And we need to come out of that cycle articulating who we are. What do we mean by liberal art and science university? What is co-black? What does that really mean? Why does it matter to the students? Why does it matter to the student's parent? If we can do that job, articulate them, and bring in all the benefit of coming to Sonoma State, we have a very good chance of really, really rebuilding this university. But it will not be the same. That will be doing in the past. It'll be a new, stronger, better Sonoma State. And I wish at that point we all have a chance to celebrate together where we are. But it's not an easy journey. Okay, next question.
I have an online question.
Sure.
And then we have a question with a hand up here as well. So the online question, to what extent is SSU recruiting students from out of state? I'm thinking especially of states currently trying to roll back civil rights for marginalized persons for whom college in California might be especially attractive.
Great question. So we are recruiting out of state. We especially this year, we have really sent our recruiters out and have done a lot of digital marketing to out of state students. That message about California being a state where women's rights, where civil rights are preserved, protected, is a message that we are conveying to our out-of-state students. We saw a decline in out-of-state students coming to Sonoma State during the pandemic, but this fall we actually saw I think it was an 18% increase in out-of-state student populations. And we have the advantage of being part of the Western Undergraduate Exchange that provides tuition at 150% of in-state tuition to out-of-state students in kind of the contiguous states. And so we are seeing increased enrollment from states in the West, particularly. So yeah, that is happening. We're actually beginning to see some increases. We probably are going to need to do more and more. And so building some scholarship opportunities for those students to help with the gap of the cost of coming out of state is really important. But it's also important to know that the tuition revenue, the tuition in California at CSUs is less than some of the tuition that other states are charging their students. And so we actually can provide a value proposition to students, even at 150% of in-state tuition.
Okay, next question. Ian, do you have one more question?
Hi, I'm Scott Horstein. I teach in theater arts and dance. Thank you very much for this presentation and for this session. So a question I have, and I don't know if it's an easy question to answer, is in terms of the academic reorganization. And so maybe a question more for the provost, I definitely see the right strategy, ideas, questions, and I'm excited to think creatively and move forward with it. The way my brain works is that I feel like I need a target, where it's sort of like, we need to get here. Okay, if you do this, it will contribute this. If you do this, it will contribute this. And I realize that's a hard thing to do. It's like, we need to save a couple $1 million. If you do this, it will save 200. It's not always that simple. And perhaps that's the work that will happen in the committees that you put together. But I just wanted to put that out there. And I don't know if that's the kind of information that can flow easily to people outside those committees or not. But any thoughts that you have would be welcome.
I'd like to carry, because we have limited time. I think you make a very good point, because the provost had just started the academic master plan process, and I think some of this question can be addressed more thoroughly in that process. So I'm not trying to avoid your question, but I think that's a better forum, and I think there'll be a lot of more in detail discussion about that. I hope you don't mind, I said, because we have limited time, and everybody will have a chance to ask questions from the audience. Is that okay?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we're going to go with an online question next. It says, moving summer session to stateside, what does it mean tuition-wise for our students, including MA program students, and how does this impact our extended education?
Well, clearly, I'll answer the last part. The summer revenue has been a very big source of the revenue for the extended education. Okay, however, they are our students. And in the CSU system, about half the CSU campuses count their summer enrollment into their stateside or overall enrollment. Half is like us who count it out. But I think in times like this, we have to think about what is the best for the university overall. And because we have been 3 years at least that are lower and significantly lower than the target that is set by the CSU system, every year that we are way below that target, we are in danger. So I really believe that it's a better move for us now to move over there. And it does offer some benefit to the students because now summer also allow them to get financial aid in the process. So in terms of individual impact on certain programs, I think, again, there are other forum we're gonna do to be able to allow that to come. But I just want to share with you the reasoning behind what we are doing. We're moving that direction. Okay. Next question.
Just to follow up on that one more, because I think they said, what does it mean tuition wise for students?
It's lower.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Thank you.
First, thanks for the chance to be here and hear the presentation. I guess I don't know an elegant way to ask this question, but when you look at the enrollment chart, what happened? What's the story behind those numbers?
Usually this is a question for the provost, but and again, we have limited time, so allow me. Number one, it is a national trend. We like it or not, the pandemic had tremendous impact on all university. I have many university president colleagues across the nation. A very large percentage of them are dealing with the same thing. Again, we lost 1.4 million students. Think about the scale of that loss. The entire CSU, 23 campuses combined, we have about 470,000. And this nation lost 1.4, 3 times of all 23 CSU campuses combined. It is not small. It is not small, okay? Another thing I think we need to certainly look inside of ourselves. What have we done and what have we not done? When we see this wave coming, clearly, if anybody can have a crystal ball and predict this is going to happen, it's going to be bad, we would have done a lot of things, but nobody have seen it. And I understand it's important that we learn from it, and we are learning from it. But I want to really make sure that this is not also very careful. This is not a time to point finger at each other and say, you didn't do your part. I did all my, it's not helpful. Okay, we have come through some tough time. We have some tough time ahead of us. This is time for us to really come together, unite together to make a difference. But I think clearly there are multiple factors contribute to that. But I think a big part of that is how do we market ourselves. I think this university have been very comfortable. That's why in some way we hide ourselves behind the tall redwood trees and the mountain of dirt. So you drive by Petaluma Hill, you cannot see us. So yesterday when we met with the city manager of Rona Park and Katati and the police chief and the fire chief, I was joking, but I'm if it's possible, I like to do it. We need to build this area into a cottage town. And if it means that we need to paint this entire area blue, we should do it. So that not only you drive by, you see blue, Sonoma State, you should ever see us from satellite. There's a blue dot right here. Let's go there. So no matter what we have done or not done in the past, this marketing going to be our number one. And I know a lot of faculty are not comfortable using the term marketing. So let's not use the word. Let's say, tell our story. Let people know who we are. Let people come join Sonoma because it is so beautiful. And the students are so nice. They are my neighbors. I love them. Of course, I haven't seen major party yet, I might regret, but so far, very good student. Do we have time for? Oh, really? Oh, good. So we have time. I'm sorry. I keep thinking that. Sure.
President Lee, I have one more question. It's good to hear that the administration is sensitive to the impact of the proposed plan on people, faculty, staff, and students. From what I see, I can expect sacrifices will be expected from faculty and staff. As it is, we've already lost faculty and staff. So I'm wondering what sacrifices can we expect on the administrator side?
Or there will be measures taken as well. Okay, and I know some people have questioned about this voluntary separation incentive program. How come it's not applied to MPP? Okay, and the reason is MPP, because they are not united. There's a specific way for us to handle if there's any separation situation. So there's already some, should I say, protection there to allow them some period of time, to if the separation happens. So it's different from collective bargaining units. But as we look at reorganization and look at other things, that MPP will be impacted as well. But I cannot tell you what the impact going to be, because like I said, we have to see where the chips fall to really know the extent and what we have to do. Okay. But I do want you to keep in mind, no matter what happened, we will make sure that it's done properly and fairly. And we have opportunity for people to go for other opportunities if it comes to that particular point. Okay. And other than that, I don't know what else I can tell you. Okay.
Good morning, Dr. Lee. My name is Roberto Campos. We have met prior to this. I'm a third-year psychology student here, and I'm also a Central Valley native. With that being said, when I was making my decision to go to college, I was never really outreached by anyone here at Sonoma State, and a lot of the population in the Central Valley is just really persuaded to go to either Sacramento State, Bakersfield, or Fresno. What does outreach look like now in the Central Valley for it being such a culturally diverse hub for students?
Now that sounds like, I think the provost has more detailed answers to that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that question, because it really gets at the expansion of efforts to go across the state in terms of recruiting students. So actually the Central Valley has been over this past year and this fall a key area of outreach. So we have one of the things that's happened with our outreach operation is that we've developed territories for our people who are doing that outreach, which means that they divide up the state into areas, and then a person is one of those recruiters is given a set of targets for an area like the Central Valley, and is asked to recruit X number of students from that area. And so I don't know exactly what those targets are for the Central Valley, but we have deliberately targeted that area as a new area for recruitment of students. So I'm hoping that you'll see much more marketing, and that the students who come behind you will see much more outreach from Sonoma State in that region of California.
And all these things that we're doing is not necessarily just for the next couple of years. This is also for the long haul. And Robbie, another thing I think, aside from what the provost talked about, one major attraction for students from Central Valley, I live in Central Valley for 28 years, is the 20-degree temperature difference to come to Sonoma. It's so wonderful here, so cool. And so what we call heat wave in this area is like everyday temperature in Sacramento area. Next question.
Thank you all so much for putting together this presentation and this forum, and for having a conversation. It's really wonderful. You know me, for anyone who doesn't, I'm Andrew Levisi. I'm the Information Security Officer. And my question is, and this might be a question for Laura, I'm not sure, but my question is about how do we account for risk in our budgeting? Because one of the things that I see directly in IT, but I'm guessing similar things happen elsewhere on campus, is as our staff dwindles, and we struggle to provide services, we also struggle to protect our infrastructure and maintain it, which can involve risks of security incidents or infrastructure failures. And so although that's not a planned activity, right, there's a certain probability associated with a certain big expense. And I'm wondering how is that accounted for in our budget planning?
Very, very good question. Actually, I'm sort of somebody who a practitioner, and I wouldn't call myself expert, but I have been engaged with risk management for a long time. Actually, before I retired in 2018, I chair the CSU Risk Management Authority. I know many of you have not even heard of that name, but it's very, very important organization. It started in 1994. And it's an organization that is controlled by CSU and that provide insurance. And Tyson is part of the organization where it provides insurance that cover the entire CSU system. What does that mean? CSU 23 campuses, all the property, chancellor's office, all 60,000 staff and faculty, all 470,000 students, all 100 plus auxiliaries, billions and billions of dollars, workers' compensation, liability, property, cybersecurity, everything is covered by this big insurance company. Before I retire, I was the chair of the board for 2 years. Day in and day out, I see the risk. Day in and day out, I see the consequences of something that goes wrong. Of course, every university has to plan for that. That's why we have contingency fund. That's why we have reserve. If the campus, for God's sake, run into major, major disasters that deplete our entire reserve, I don't think that will ever happen. If it gets to that point, CSU system has reserve and contingency fund to cover that as well. So there are multiple layers to make sure that if we do get into a situation, there will be financial resources to recover us from that. But again, the best way for us to prevent that from happening is make sure that we are able to plan and be able to predict, hopefully, and have a plan in place. Disasters can happen in IT area. Disaster can happen in our security area. And that's what a police chief had to be careful about. Disasters can happen in this entire area, and we see the fire. But every organization that's resilient has a way to come back. And it is in our budget that we plan for the reserve, we plan for the contingency like that. So yeah, Andrew, thank you for your question. That's a very good one. And IT plays certainly very, very critical in that. And again, like everyone else, I know you are trying to go through some difficult time. We are all. But I want to thank you for keeping the security of the university in mind. Okay, thank you.
All right, got an online question next. And it says that we know pedagogy such as active learning can improve student outcomes. However, we also know that changes on this scale require significant investments in time and practice by faculty. Can we better fund faculty development or faculty course transformations? There is no money in the budget, of course, but it could potentially increase student graduation rates.
Yeah, I think the provost can answer, but I think anything is possible. It's really a matter about how we identify the key, the most important functions and area and people, and that we're able to provide support for that. But I'll let the provost.
Thanks. That's a great question. And I'm a huge believer in active learning and have been working on that my whole career. And as a first a faculty member and then in various administrative roles. And it is really important. And what you need to do when you're trying to prioritize is to figure out how to allocate funds to the things you think are important. That active learning, interdisciplinarity, those kinds of initiatives, if we consider them valuable, then we need to find ways to support. Now, we've been doing that for several years, again, through that Teagle grant and through other kinds of grants offered by the Provost's office to help with curriculum development, to help with our CTET, our Center for Teaching and Educational Technology. We have a great faculty development set of fellows run under Matthew Pilucci Callahan's guidance that is available to faculty to help right now with curriculum change that assists in reducing equity gaps, that is inclusive pedagogy. So all of those pieces, active learning, all of those pieces are available right now. And you can make an appointment today to talk with someone in our Center for Teaching and Educational Technology to get started on those kinds of curricular changes that you as a faculty member believe are important and that we as a campus believe are important in accord with our core values. So please take advantage of those resources, but we also are constantly looking for ways to, for example, continue the Teagle funding that is happening. We're working on grant opportunities for that and continuing to look for ways to fund helping faculty to do the best work that they can do to help our students to succeed.
Thank you, Karen. Next question.
Hi, thanks for this opportunity. I'm Mark Andre, I'm a faculty member. This is kind of maybe a naive question, but it's come up from other people's lips and not just in my head. But the voluntary separation program doesn't feel strategic in a sense that we're worried that it might be attractive to some of the most skilled employees, the most credentialed faculty who are perhaps the most mobile. I'm a little concerned that it might lead to like a skill drain. This is your opportunity to try to reassure me and hit unsubscribe.
It is not a naive question. It is not a naive question. Is it strategic? I don't know. I think it's somewhere between strategic and tactic. I think, but it is really have become necessity, right? You have seen the scale, the magnitude of what we have to deal with, and when the president of any decision-making university deal with a situation like this, you have several options. And some people would say the easiest way is actually to do a layoff. Right? If I need to take out 6 million deficit or 10 million deficit, I can just go into my employee list and just say, let's add up all the salaries and benefit, and I'll make a cutoff point from the junior, the newest member of the university, and then calculate it, accumulate it to the point I say, everybody below this line, go. I can do that in less than a day. Is that the way we want this to be? Is that the way to treat the people, the faculty, the new staff that we work so hard to hire? Is that also a painful loss of talents? If there's a good, easy way to do this, I would have done it. I don't have to wait 3 months. I don't have to wait a semester. This is really, in my view, voluntary is better than involuntary. If we don't do something, allow people to have the choice, potentially somebody else out of this university can make that decision for us, and that would not be the situation we'd like to see. Am I worried we're going to lose a lot of good people? To some extent, everybody who chooses to leave could be good people that we lose. Do I have a lot of choices ahead of me to make an easy decision? I really don't, because it's very clear what we have to do. And I really think that depends on how you look at it. I think people who have a career here, want to continue to build a career here, want to be a part of the effort that we build back this university, will probably choose to stay. Now, 6 months salary would not be strong enough incentive to get them up. But some people have different plans for their life. Some people have situation in their life that happen to fit what they need. Some people have opportunity to go somewhere. And I think we simply provide them with an opportunity. We're not really encouraged. You can see I'm not particularly enthusiastic in getting people to sign up for it. I'm simply providing that as a choice. And again, I have no way of knowing. Am I worried about we can potentially damage the critical function of the university? Of course I am. But keep in mind, those who sign up have until May 30th to leave the university. We have 1 semester to really review where are the critical links that we're missing when people choose to leave, that we can do something about it. Okay. And BS5B does not mean that we're not going to hire back some positions. Some we're going to have to do, including faculty. And we also, I think, if people are willing, that we can actually sit down and talk to the people who choose to leave about scheduling. So give us a little bit more time. So there are multiple measures that we can do to try to minimize the impact of this program. But at the end of the day, it's really people's choice. What do you choose to do? And I think, throughout our life, we make career choices, right? We choose to stay in one place, we choose to take another job, or we choose to retire. And of course, come back, 4 years later. So there are a lot of possibilities in life. And simply that this is something that we do, I think it's really the least of the devils I have to mention of what we have choice. But I totally understand. And I too, very, very concerned. I'm a long-time faculty member. I taught 12 years in the classroom and I was department chair. I certainly know the pain of losing, but I'm also very worried that all the new faculty and staff that we brought in that inject the new blood into our department, into our curriculum, I'm equally concerned about them. Okay.
Hi, it's me again. So I love Sonoma State. I'm a graduate of Sonoma State when Salazar was the library.
And you used to sit next to the window that you're sitting now.
The window I look out of. I love it. Anyways, so I've been here a long time as a community member, living in Sonoma County, all that stuff. And Sonoma State is a very special place. You want all of us to be recruiters. You want faculty to be recruiters. You want staff to be recruiters. In order for us to be effective recruiters, we have to know that the place we work is supportive of us. And I feel like sometimes that's not the case. We're now going to have people voluntarily leaving. We've had that happen with the EEP. We've had people take on more duties without proper compensation, whether that means that duties were taken off of their desk to put those new duties on, or they got compensated by a stipend or a bonus or a pay raise. We have faculty that I still remember Maria Hess from psychology. She retired before you got here, but you would have loved her. So I remember faculty, I remember staff. I remember going to Seawolf Services when it was in portables in the village over there, and them answering every single question I ever had. So I have very good memories of Sonoma State. I came back here for those memories, and because this place is important to the community. I want to ensure that the staff and faculty that are left behind are not burnt out and then they leave. Because I've seen it happen. I've worked in nonprofits. I used to work in drug treatment. That's a pendulum that swings both ways, right? They get cut millions of dollars, they get $1 million. I've seen them come and go. I've worked for agencies that don't exist anymore. So I understand that budget-wise. What is the university as a whole going to do to ensure the people who stay behind are treated like they are as important as they are to the infrastructure of Sonoma State?
Well, you're gonna have to start from me. Very, very good question. And it has been always on my mind about all of you who are toughing it out in the last couple of years. And I think the answer is that anybody who take on additional duty really need to be evaluated. And we need to be able to support them appropriately. And if we continue on this path and just cut everything across the board, the outcome would be nobody can be properly supported because we're taking across the board. And it doesn't matter you are a fantastic performer or you do very little, you would all be treated the same. And that's fundamentally flawed in the system. Part of these measures that we are doing right now, again, I cannot predict where the chip's gonna fall. But if it, through our effort, not only reduction, but if we are able to be successful in our revenue enhancement, that allow the university to bring in additional resources, we should put it to make sure those people who take on additional duty are able to get additional support in multiple ways, not just compensation. But I think if you're like me, who talk to people, everybody, I talk to custodian, I talk to groundkeeper, I talk to faculty, I talk to accountants. I've been doing that for 3 decades. If you're like me who know people as a person and what I do, you probably also know we always deal with the equity issue, right? Faculty who put up a lot of work, you advise hundreds of students. But let's be real, there are other people who don't do that. And you're not happy when I tell you that I'm going to cut 10% from you, 10% from everybody. And you're crying and say, no way, I'm already taking that. Yes, you are telling me the truth. But on the other hand, there are areas that probably should be exempt and not be supported at the same level. And that's really, it's hard work. Right? It's easier to cut across the board. It's tougher because you really need to get deeper to understand every single function of a unit. And that's what I'm asking every vice president or a cabinet member, as we develop this plan, you got to really, really know what are the major functions that your area play and who are the people and what they do. And we need to be able to properly go back and support them. How much can we support? Depends on how successful we are in this revenue enhancement, depends on how successful we are in adjusting our budget situation. But yes, no, you asked a very, very good question. And of course, I know you remember your professors. Many of my students remember me too. And it's a very, very heartwarming feeling. But that's what we do. That's why we become teachers, right? Thank you for the question. A couple more questions. Okay.
Good morning. I'm Jamie from IT. I think a lot of this morning we've talked about the current problem and some of the more immediate ways that we're going to solve it in the next, 2 to 3 years. I'm curious about a longer term strategy and solution. One of the upcoming and will likely be one of the leading issues is our 8th graders and their math scores. And I'm wondering if that is not just a problem that as a huge nationwide society and internationally for that matter, matter, we can look ahead as an opportunity to, within our region, start to engage some of the local middle and high schools, and even engage our math, STEM, those kinds of programs that we have, and see how we can reach out into our region to lift that up a little bit, because I know our teachers, that many have graduated from here, are sinking right now, trying to get these 8th graders up to their numbers. And this is really cutting information, in that the results have just been released in the last month, and it's terrifying.
You absolutely asked a wonderful question. Mario is smiling at me. We've been working on this since day one I came here. Okay, the state of California, particularly, has a major challenge ahead of us. And it's because we are now, as a state, becoming the 4th largest economy in the world. In a few days, a week, we'll be surpassing Germany with the highest GDP, number 4, if we are a country in the entire world. Think about it. It's amazing. But what is keeping up this economic engine rolling, continue to be powerful, are the people. People who work in all the different industries, including higher education, that continue to be able to bring in talent, training, skill. But we have challenges. We have a large percentage of our population from lower income families, from Latinx community, that are not getting the kind of education they need to go to higher education. One very, very simple indicator of that is whether or not a student in high school can pass A through G and become eligible to go to CSU or UC. It is so unevenly distributed. Students from the very rich or well-to-do community are able to do that easily, achieving 100%, 90% A through G eligibility rate. But there are many other schools that are not able to do that. Many of those schools are in our community, in Roland Park, our neighbor, Rancho Cotati. You know their A through G preparation rate? 25%. 75 out of 100 students graduate from our high school, our neighbor, are not able to come to Sonoma State because they're not qualified. Do we have a problem? We have a huge problem. We have a huge problem. And that's why we are working so closely with all the superintendents. And I was so happy, the Petaluma School District Superintendent, 7,000 students came to visit me. We sit down and he say, I'd like to do this with Sonoma State. If our student pass A through G and meet all the requirements of Sonoma State, we want them to get automatic admission to Sonoma State. And we say, great, we're working on that. It will happen. He is going to take this back to his teachers and back to the students and say, if you work hard, we give you the courses, you finish it, you meet a requirement, bang, you have admission to Sonoma. You can choose where to go, but you have Sonoma already. We need to use whatever we can. Our teachers' education program are out there in Petaluma, in Santa Rosa, to try to teach students, to try to get more students through the process. It's going to be what we can do, but it also can be what a community can do. Everywhere we go, Mario put me on a lot of meetings with the community. We are doing that. I'm working with Latinx community to try to have them work with us to get the words out. We're going to the Super Sunday to get the church to help us spread a message. Absolutely. Down the road, Sonoma State needs to be a top-notch CSU destination campus with the strongest liberal art and science foundation education. And we will get there. The name will shine. And this area will become a college town with Sonoma State University as the anchor, if not all painted blue. you will see the blue, and everybody will know that is the place I want to send my children to. And of course, not just for the wine, it's also for the education and beautiful environment. I think we are running out of time, but I want to one more time. I say this since day one I came here. I do see hope. I do see hope. And please think about the future. Think about what it takes to get there. And I think trying to point out all the shortcomings or who didn't do what or who's done that is not the way to do it. Everybody think through what we do and how can we do more. And of course, our obligation is to make sure that when you do more and take on more, we are properly providing with support that you need to do your job. Again, as I mentioned several times, it's not like walk in the park, but it's something that's doable. And there are a lot of moving parts. Let me say it again, the more we can increase revenue, the more wiggle room, flexibility we have on the other hand. But I want to promise you, as long as I'm the president of this university, we will continue to open up opportunities for you to address us, for you to ask questions, for us to provide you with our thoughts and our thinking and information. And one more time, thank you very much for being here. And thank you very much for being part of Sonoma's Day. Thank you.
First in line, I am still free. Take a chance on me.